All right, let's talk about credit card rewards. You know, the points, the miles, the cashback, all those amazing free flights. But have you ever really stopped to think about where all that free stuff actually comes from? Because the real answer is, well, it's a lot more interesting and maybe a little more uncomfortable than you might think.
And it's true, it really feels that way, doesn't it? Here in the US, getting your hands on thousands of dollars in credit is shockingly easy. You can get approved in minutes online, and the deals they throw at you, they seem almost too good to be true.
I mean, the perks are just insane. We're talking free access to fancy airport lounges, free streaming services, welcome bonuses that can be worth thousands of dollars. It's this constant shower of benefits, and all you have to do is use a piece of plastic you were gonna swipe anyway. It honestly feels like we've all discovered some kind of cheat code for the economy.
Now, the story we usually tell ourselves to make it all make sense is pretty straightforward, right? For every savvy person like you who pays their bill in full every month and gets free trips to Hawaii, there's someone else who's trapped, paying insane 20% interest rates on their debt. And their financial pain is basically funding your gain. It's a simple, if a bit sad, transfer of wealth.
It's a neat and tidy explanation, but let's just hit pause for a second. If you really think about it from the bank's point of view, does that story actually add up?
So here's the thing. Banks are not charities, especially not for people who are good with their money. The customers who pay their bills on time and spend a ton are their best customers. If those people, the points collectors, were actually costing them money, the banks wouldn't be fighting tooth and nail, offering more and more ridiculous perks to get their business. Something else has to be going on. There's another engine here.
And that really gets us to the heart of it all. If it's not just the high interest payments from people carrying a balance, where are the billions of dollars that fund this rewards paradise actually coming from?
Well, the secret is hidden in plain sight, in the simple act of you buying a cup of coffee. See, when you swipe your card, your money doesn't just magically jump from your bank to the coffee shop. No, it goes on a little journey through at least 3 different middlemen: your bank, the card network like Visa or MasterCard, and the coffee shop's bank. And you guessed it, every single one of them takes a little piece of the pie.
And that little piece has a name. It's called interchange. This is the big one. Interchange is a fee, usually around 2 or 3%, that the merchant, the store, has to pay to your bank every single time you use your credit card. This isn't just some tiny fee. For the banks, it's a massive, nonstop river of cash.
To give you a sense of just how huge these fees are, get this. Back in 2008, a company like Home Depot spent more money on interchange fees than it did on healthcare for its 300,000 employees. Let that sink in. More on credit card fees than on the health of their entire workforce. That's the staggering scale we're talking about here.
Okay, so you've got this gigantic pool of money flowing from merchants to banks. That money doesn't just sit there. It basically kicks off an all-out war between the banks, a true rewards arms race to capture the customers who spend the most.
And this is where American Express had a completely brilliant and, you might say, ruthless idea. While Visa and MasterCard were trying to get their cards accepted everywhere by keeping their fees kind of low, Amex went the other way. They cranked their interchange fees way up. They knew merchants would hate it, but they did it so they could turn around and use that extra money to offer way, way better rewards.
And oh boy, did it work. Those amazing rewards attracted much wealthier customers who spent a lot more money. Back in 2006, the average Amex cardholder spent almost 4 times as much as a Discover cardholder. So suddenly, for a store owner, paying that higher Amex fee was actually worth it to get that big spending customer in the door.
And this whole thing created a powerful self-reinforcing cycle. You see how it works? Higher interchange fees mean the bank can offer better rewards. Better rewards attract the biggest spenders, and those big spenders generate even more in interchange fees for the bank, which they then pour back into creating even crazier, more lavish rewards. That's the loop that took us from simple 1% cash back to getting free gym memberships. Okay, so right about now, you're probably thinking, hold on a minute. If my fancy travel card is costing the store 3%, why don't they just charge me an extra 3%? That would kind of make my rewards pointless, right? It's a great question.
Well, the cost stays invisible for 2 main reasons. First, the card networks like Visa and Amex have strict rules that say merchants aren't allowed to charge you more for using one type of card over another. They can't punish you for using your high-fee Platinum card. And second, businesses know something really simple about us. We absolutely hate seeing a bunch of extra fees tacked on at the checkout. It just feels bad. So the merchants are caught in a bind. What do? They do the only thing they can. They calculate the average cost of all those different card fees, and they just bake that cost into the sticker price of everything they sell, which means everyone pays for it, whether you use a fancy rewards card, a simple debit card, or even cold, hard cash.
And here is the real hidden sting of this whole system. It creates a massive, invisible transfer of wealth. Research from the Federal Reserve found that the average household that primarily uses cash, which tends to be a lower-income household, effectively pays an extra $149 a year in these inflated prices. And where does that money go? It essentially gets transferred to the average card-using household, who comes out ahead by more than $1,100 a year in rewards.
A law professor at Georgetown, Adam Leverton, put it very bluntly. He said families on food stamps are effectively supporting the 1%, because the cost is baked into the price of groceries and gas and everything else. The people who can least afford it and who don't have access to these elite rewards cards are subsidizing the free flights and luxury hotel stays for those at the top.
So this seems incredibly lopsided, right? It's basically a hidden tax. So why on earth does this system continue to exist, especially with such a vengeance here in the United States?
Well, you just have to look across the Atlantic to see that it doesn't have to be this way. In the European Union, they passed laws that cap interchange fees at a tiny 0.3%. And the result? Credit cards there are pretty boring. They're just for paying for things, very few rewards. Meanwhile, in the US, there's no cap on credit card fees, which lets the credit card paradise and the whole rewards arms race run wild.
So why does it stick around here? Well, it's basically a perfect storm. First, the whole system is deliberately confusing. Most people have never even heard the word interchange. Second, we, the consumers, only see the good part, the free stuff, the points. The downside is totally hidden, buried in slightly higher prices across the board. And finally, you have an incredibly powerful financial lobby that works around the clock in Washington to make sure this very, very profitable system stays exactly the way it is.
So at the end of the day, those points are anything but free. They're paid for by a hidden fee that drives up the price of everything for everyone, and it hits the people who can least afford it the hardest. The whole system turns every purchase you make into a tiny, invisible act of wealth redistribution. So the real question I want to leave you with is this. Now that you know who's actually paying, is it worth it?